October 7th, 2011, from the stylish high-tech underground studios of RIIIGHT Media in yet-to-turn crisp Warwick, Rhode Island, this is NewsUndies. For October 7th, 2011, this is NewsUndies, all the news that shouldn't be news. I'm Paul Torville with these headlines. Jennifer Hudson wins Nobel Prize for uncovering link between obesity and hunger. Doritos inventor dead at 97. Never occurred to me that Doritos were invented. After wrecking the economy and being bailed out by the taxpayers, Bank of America thanks the taxpayers by wrecking the economy. Again. Andy Rooney finally, mercifully, signs off at age 92. Thanks for all those great not dropping dead on live television moments, Andy. You will be doing something else on Sunday evenings, I suspect. A remarkably stupid mother has proclaimed that play areas contain disease-causing germs. Of course they do! That's where immune systems come from. Bank of America thanks taxpayers for bailout by laying off 35,000 of them. Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad addresses UN General Assembly wearing sport coat not balled up in a backpack. UBS. Oops! Flushed the cash. Single trader disappears $2 billion in an afternoon. Toys R Us to hire 40,000. Bank of America lays off 35,000. Sounds like an even swap, no? Michael Jackson. Somehow, the trial of Conrad Murray, Michael Jackson's personal physician at the time of his death, has had no discernible impact on the European debt crisis. As Greece moves closer to defaulting on its sovereign debt, the fate of Dr. Murray and Dr. Sanjay Gupta's informative and sexy analysis of the effects of propofol draw attention away from even the most gripping coverage of Eurozone monetary policy and coverage of Amanda Knox's appeal in an Italian courtroom. Elsewhere, in the United Nations, Mahmoud Abbas, president of the Palestinian Authority, submitted an application for full membership in the UN General Assembly as a fully recognized state. The official position of the United States is that the UN cannot create nations and impose peace by fiat, like it did with the full support of the U.S. in 1948, when it turned over the British-controlled Palestinian Mandate to the Jews, creating the State of Israel. After making this impassioned plea for statehood, Abbas could be seen leaning forward at the edge of a seat, gripped by the coverage of the trial of Dr. Murray. As the 2012 U.S. presidential race draws ever so slightly nearer, Michael Jackson inches ahead of Rick Perry, Herman Cain, and Richard Nixon in GOP straw polls. With New Jersey Governor Chris Christie having decided not to run for the White House, GOP debate organizers have stopped trying to decide whether to have one extra-tall, extra-wide podium or to make all the podiums extra-tall and extra-wide. Also, there is talk of offering Michael Jackson a special sequined horizontal hyperbaric podium. When politicians position themselves to end their careers in an amusingly graceless way, it's time to put them on political suicide watch. Michelle Bachmann proves not only crazy, but dishonest, too. At a campaign rally in Florida, Michelle Bachmann said, quote, "I don't know how much God has to do to get the attention of the politicians. We've had an earthquake, we've had a hurricane," and he said, "Are you going to start listening to me here? Listen to the American people, because the American people are roaring right now." End quote. She made no subsequent effort in that context to demonstrate the existence of this God character, or provide any evidence that, if he exists, he actually said and did what she says. Later, her spokespeople said it was a jest. Right. Meanwhile, Sarah Palin might be a lunatic. On a non-campaign stop in New Hampshire, because she's not running. You've heard that, right? Well, anyway, while there, talking about the Tea Party movement, she said they, the Tea Party, had on their side truth, logic, and a record of success. Is this opposite day? In other news, Rick Perry finds the secret formula for turning voters into willing slaves and promptly loses it. Michelle Bachmann has the same science degree as the Pope. Rick Perry manages to alienate all but the most dangerously insane non-voting felons, still tops GOP polls. Ron Paul pledges to institute gladiatorial games for health coverage. New postal regulations mean Michael Jackson can be on a postage stamp much sooner than he can be beatified. And he will be beatified. In other Popey news, Pope Benedict XVI, on an historic trip to Germany, told German Catholics that the Catholic Church is just as relevant to Germany as it was when he was a boy. The Pope's remarks were followed by a brief fashion show highlighting the latest in earth-toned school and work uniforms with whimsical red armbands and black patent leather belts and matching shoes. Gott mit uns, eh, Your Holiness? While the threat Michael Jackson may have allegedly posed to children may be past, the threat messianically charged clergy posed to children certainly has not. Case in point, a former Hendersonville, North Carolina priest, Father Joseph Kelleher, has been named in a lawsuit against the Diocese of Charlotte of the Roman Catholic Church, alleging that the priest sexually abused 2 boys in Albemarle and Charlotte. Plaintiffs filed a suit against the Roman Catholic Diocese of Charlotte. Charges include sexual abuse by Kelleher, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, infliction of emotional distress, and negligent hiring, supervision, and retention. Immaculate Conception Church declined to comment, referring all questions to the Diocese of Charlotte. The suit, seeking damages in excess of $10,000, also alleges that the Diocese of Charlotte has concealed child sex crimes by clergy since the diocese was founded, and that such cover-ups continue even now, asserting the Diocese of Charlotte knew or should have known since at least the 1970s that Kelleher was abusing minors. My call, Jack! Son! Despite the best efforts of Ray Kurzweil and Steve Jobs, Michael Jackson continues to not perform in sold-out venues everywhere but the United States. In other news, Windows has a future? Apparently so. Microsoft has released the next version of its Windows operating system, the cleverly named Windows 8, to beta. Bring on the Me Tooing! Early reports show the operating system has some of the features iPod Touch users have been finding irreplaceable, but still saying meh about for nearly 5 years. Microsoft continues to live up to its decades-old mantra, not first, not best, but ultimately, not absent either. Well, that's a shame. Is there any way in which Conrad Murray could have screwed up more royally? Here are Pig and Sheep with their thoughts.
If Dr. Murray was in fact responsible for Michael Jackson's death, then the only thing I can think of that would have been worse was if he had mistaken David Guest for Michael and killed him instead. Oh.
There's a lot to unpack there. And I think I have no opinion at all of a sudden.
That's what Pig and Sheep think. What are your thoughts? Email them to ovcomments@newsundies.com. Michael Jack, son. As if the 2012 GOP race wasn't turning into the headline act at the International Convention of Sideshow Performers and Circus Freaks, the conservatives are collectively in a twist over how their party's next savior is, or rather was to be, New Jersey Governor and universally acknowledged Man Mountain Chris Christie. Christie decided on Tuesday not to run, leaving the low-hanging fruit of presidential fat jokes off the table for late-night comedians, unless they can figure out how to work Taft into 21st century politics. It's like the GOP is so deep in its own delusional little world that it's developed an event horizon. Former Vice President and Ed 209 spokesman Dick Cheney, who barely said 6 words publicly during the 8 years of the George W. Bush presidency, suddenly can't keep his trap shut or his Sebastian Shaw mug off TV. Why? Could it be because he's shilling a book? Yes, it is. Of course, Cheney isn't saying much. He's just talking a lot. And finally, and I do mean finally, we all saw this coming, didn't we? Michael Jackson's personal physician is on trial for involuntary manslaughter, first do no harming Michael Jackson into an early grave. Some of the evidence already coming out in the trial is the fact that Murray was stockpiling propofol to feed to Jackson, and Jackson was incoherent, apparently from all the propofol and supplemental oxygen. Well, that's nice. Well, that's all for this edition of News Undies. Remember, News Undies is a monthly show, and we'll be back on Friday, November 4th with fresh undies. If you see news that shouldn't be news, go to www.newsundies.com to submit a story tip. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Paul Torville. After that, I might be that thing slightly off camera that Michelle Bachmann can't seem to take her eyes off of. It's the story of a lovely lady